Welcome to the fourth episode of Indian MMA Origin Stories, which is an interview series through which we at Locker Room try to cover the origin stories of Indian MMA gyms, fight teams, promotions, events, and whatnot. This is Ranjit Ravindran here, and in the fourth episode, we will be featuring Jitendra Kare, who is the head coach of Team Relentless. Here is his story.
Team Relentless. What was the first idea or the spark that you got to start the whole thing?
This is now almost 8 years. So what happened is I started Evolution Mixed Martial Arts Academy way back in December 2009. In 2010, I was tied up with somebody and we were working towards, promoting MMA and stuff. And, one of the major promotions in India came around and signed up with us. And we started working with them. And somewhere, our identity got diluted in that. But at that point, we were looking at the bigger picture and we wanted to continue, promoting MMA. But over a period of time, I realized that there was a lot of dilution of what the initial goal of starting that whole promotion was. And, the whole idea behind giving it organic growth and stuff was taking a backseat to commercialization and stuff, which I did not agree with at that point. And so at that point, I kind of parted ways with them. And with that came kind of a lot of backlash where, we were a group of 4 or 5 guys who were told, oh, you can't train MMA and you're blacklisted. And if you put up anything saying you're doing MMA, we'll sue you and stuff like that. And we were like, listen, you can't stop us from doing what we love doing. So, we continued training, and that's where we formed Team Relentless, and we started going out and, because kind of a lot of people closed doors to us because, obviously we were kind of blacklisted by one of the biggest promotions and the so-called pioneers in India and stuff like that. So we started traveling a lot abroad and training and competing abroad. And, that's what laid the groundwork for what Team Relentless is today.
So this happened like in 2012, if I'm right.
Yeah, 2012 is when we formed Team Relentless.
So before that, in 2009 itself, you opened Evolution MMA.
Yes, Evolution MMA we opened way back in 2009. We opened doors in December 2009 actually, and yeah.
So how was that process like?
So like I said, I have been a martial artist for life. I was fortunate enough to be in a school in Devlali where boxing was part of our curriculum, sports curriculum. We had to box. Like there was no reason for us not to. So with that, also came kickboxing and other martial arts like, we were doing karate. So growing up, I did a lot of that. And, we were lucky because my coach at that point came from a very free thinking. And, at that point itself, he was also a legit judo player. So he would teach us some judo throws, though it wasn't judo, but he would still teach us some judo throws. So when I started coming back home from boarding in my holidays, I started with a bit of mud pit wrestling because he always encouraged more cross training. Though, it wasn't something I did very often because, 9 months a year I was in boarding. But whenever I was home, I would go and do some dabble with some mud pit wrestling. When I got into college, my kickboxing was still on, boxing was still on, but grappling took a backseat. And I started concentrating more on powerlifting and weightlifting at that point. And which was only after 3 years of competing in that, I got an injury. And then one of the doctors advised me to start martial arts again, saying that, it'll help you with your flexibility and weight loss and stuff. So all that started and I reconnected with, a couple of my old guys that were doing martial arts. And we came up with the idea of, because by then I had already started following Pride on ESPN, and you could get initial TUF on AXN, and obviously because of internet then opening up a little bit, you could download old Pride events and the old UFC events and what was then the WEC, and you could see those fights. And so yeah, started MMA is something that started to intrigue me because it wasn't one style, it wasn't traditional martial arts. It was a mixture of a lot of martial arts, and it was something which kind of started intriguing me. And so I connected with a couple of old friends, and we decided to start Evolution and see if we can promote the sport of MMA in India and we can do something with it. So initially we invited a lot of people to come over, black belts and other people to come over and help us train. And that's how we started Evolution MMA.
Okay, so how did you find the place and all in Mumbai? Like it was based in Mumbai, fam, right? The initial Evolution.
So in our initial gym was in Kandivali. Now, like I said, I was powerlifting and weightlifting back then. So I, was from somewhat of a weight training background, and I got one of my friends actually was giving up his gym space or letting out his gym space so that somebody else could take up that space and run the gym. So I kind of just thought that this will be a good platform, because at that point starting something just with combat sports wouldn't have been even financially viable. So I took over the gym, and then I dedicated a small section of the gym. When I say small, it was still about 800 odd square feet, which in Bombay is big. But yeah, so we dedicated a room to MMA training. And so our mainstay, obviously, or our breadwinner at that point was obviously the weight training area, because everyone likes to lift weights. At that point, everyone wanted to be a bodybuilder, and people just couldn't understand what we were doing in that MMA room. But yeah, that did sustain us for a good amount of time, gave us a good base, gave us good footing. And people started recognizing us, and then slowly it picked up from there. And then we moved on to starting a bigger place in Bandra. And yeah, so that's been the journey with Evolution.
So 2019, most people might not know like what mixed martial art. So you said that you attracted people with the weight training part. So when did they slowly start taking up or exploring that MMA option that was available to them?
So basically, there were a couple of guys, like, every gym has their own tough guys. And, these guys are like, I live this much, I live that much, I can catch you. If I catch you, I'll smash you. So, initial year was kind of like a fight club year, where almost every weekend we had some couple of tough guys coming over and trying to test us and test our, what exactly we do, what MMA is, because they couldn't understand the grappling element. For them, this was two men hugging each other. And so, yeah, I mean, couple of guys who learned truth the hard way then joined us. We had a lot of guys who kind of looked at it in terms of, because they would see us doing Muay Thai and other things, and they would look at it in terms of, oh, this looks like a good intense workout. So there were a lot of guys who were, in the fitness zone, and they were like, oh, let's try this for a workout as well. So initially, both of it helped. It was a semi fight club and a semi fitness club.
Fitness.
Yeah, but that helped us get popularity, get people. And at the same time we were competing in competitions like One Championship at that point. So there was some bit of recognition even in Asia at that point as well, because we were competing in a lot of BJJ tournaments abroad and stuff. So I think all that, coupled with whatever we were doing around our gym, kind of got people to come and train with us.
Okay, so we'll come to that One Championship. But before that, were you working during this 2019 when you opened the gym?
2009.
2009.
Yeah, I worked right up till 2012. Because obviously this wasn't going to financially support itself. So I kind of, because I had a good corporate job, and it kind of paid bills, even though small bills like maybe electricity bill, or on and off if we needed new gear, like we needed kicking shields, we needed mids. So I would plan, and then that would all be supplemented with my job. Did that till 2012, but 2012 was the main year for me when I parted ways with the big promotion. And it was like, if I don't jump into this team, this gym will probably die, because we had way too much working against us. So at that point I decided to quit my job and jump into this full time. And I told myself at that point that let's give it a year or two and see. If it doesn't, I can always go back to working. But this was something I wasn't willing to give up so easily.
So it was a huge risk for you at that point. Like, what was your mindset like?
Oh yeah, it was a huge risk at that point. My son was just 3 months old, and you can imagine when you have a new kid, the bills that you have to foot. And but luckily my family was very supportive, and they were like, listen, you're not happy doing a corporate job. If you're not happy, you're not going to come home and be happy, and it's just going to rub off on the family. So they were really supportive of me. trying to go and do my thing. And I spoke to them and I said, listen, I need a year or two to see if I can make this happen. And my mindset, like I said, was that at that point, if I wouldn't have done it, evolution would have died without any recognition for all that we did when we started. There would have been nobody to even look back and say, okay, these guys had their part to play in the start of Indian MMA and stuff. And somewhere I wasn't really ready to give that up. So I was like, I do not want to give up without trying, and this is what I love doing. And obviously, by 2012, I had also till some point recognized that this is what I want to do. This is where my calling is. So I really, really at that point though, yeah, it was a huge challenge. And, I was like at that point saying, let me give it a year or two. I can always go back to working. But somewhere deep down, I knew I'm never going to go back to working.
Okay, cool. So you said that you started competing internationally. So one championship was a huge break. I think it was in 2011, if I am right. So
Shovan went and fighting. Is when they did their first inaugural event, and so Shovan Ghosh represented India and the team at the 2011 inaugural event. We did a couple of events before that, like Martial Combat, which was the kind of like the forerunner to one championship. And we did a lot of BJJ competitions in Thailand and stuff like that.
Okay, so how did that one championship fight come together? Like, what was the story behind it?
So, like I said, we had done event previously with the guys who were the matchmakers and the guys behind one championship at that point. They were the guys who did Martial Combat. So at that point, at one championship also was starting new, and obviously even they wanted to diversify and get more athletes from Asia. And since we had already worked with them, and I want to believe that they really liked our working relation, they came back to us and they said that, listen, we are starting something bigger, and we would want you guys to work with us and trust us, and let's do this together. And we were like, sure, why not? We had a very good working relation with them, and we had quite an actually a very good experience with them. So there was no reason for us not to work with them for when they came to us and approached us for one championship. And so yeah, there was a lot of drama behind, because there was somebody else who was supposed to fight, and like 2 weeks before the fight, the person pulled off, and then Shovan was like, okay, I'll fight. And he was like 9 kgs or 10 kgs underweight. And we were like, wow. So we need to stuff you up in 10 days after 2 weeks and get you ready for the fight. But it was a great experience. It was technically one of the first training camps that we did. And, so it was good. It was good, competing at an event such as one at that point in itself was a huge feather in the cap for us. And the fact that they even came back to us and approached us to send a fighter was a good sign.
So apart from one, like you said that you have been competing internationally a lot, like there was Ultimate Beatdown, another promotion, like the Warriors FC was there. So how was the whole experience or journey like through all those promotions?
So I think, Ranjit, it took us some time to establish our credentials abroad. But, one of the few people that initially trusted us was the matchmaker and owner of Ultimate Beatdown, Melvin Yao Changik, as we call him. And he gave us, a lot of fights, and we started going there, and we had a very good win record, and promotions around Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore started, waking up and saying that, oh, so there is this team from India who's doing well. And they started inviting us. And then we had, team promotions like Warrior FC in Penang, who's, those guys have been very nice to us, always been very fair with their matchups, and, have always been very inviting to us to, come and compete at their event. We had the opportunity to compete in Thailand in the Full Metal Dojo, and a lot many more promotions in Malaysia and Singapore that came up. They were seeing us active, they were seeing us winning. And, I guess the fact that, we were one of those teams from India which was showing up and were not just a tick in the box, but were, racking up wins also, helped us in, getting these fights and, getting known and getting seen.
So that, coming back to that blacklist that you mentioned, it actually became a, blessing for you, right? Since you guys got a lot of exposure in the international scene.
Yeah, it was a blessing in disguise for us, because I have always believed, Ranjit, and I have always said this to my fighters, I am not one of those guys who wants to be a big fish in the small pond and be proud of being the number one team in India, or oh, I'm the number one coach and the number one fighter. I mean, I find that a very, very small goal to have. I want to be in the top 5 list in Asia and maybe even the world someday, and that's the goal, and that's what I'm pursuing. It's like what Michelangelo said. The fear is not to have your goal high and not achieve it, but to set the bar so low and achieve it. And so the goal was never to be content, just winning in India. And we've seen this time and again, we have guys who have ridiculous records in India, but when they go abroad, we come to face the hard reality. So that is something that I've always wanted to do, and that's why if you see a lot of our amateur guys also go abroad and compete, though it's a huge investment because none of them get paid. Right from their air ticket to even their food to even their stay is something they have to foot. But we try and get sponsors as much as possible. Their families help out. But my point to them is, listen, we can keep fighting in India and you can get ridiculous records of 9-0 and 10-0 and 13-0. And then one fight when you go abroad and, the reality hits you, that will be worse. It's better if right from the word go, you start competing and, you'll also see the level of training that is there, the level of fighters that is there. So tomorrow when you decide to go pro, there is a reality check for me as a coach and for you as a fighter.
Okay. So, interestingly, like you brought up that finance part. So has that been a major challenge, like since the inception in 2012?
Oh, it has been a huge challenge. It has been a huge challenge, Ranjit, and it still continues. So it still continues. So we are not yet cricket or we are not yet anything else. So it's obviously going to continue. But yeah, like I've said in my previous interview also, it came to a point where we had X amount of money, which us as a team could put in, and then we would pick and choose that, okay, let's let this guy go and fight this time, or let me try and get a fight for this guy this time. You fought twice, so you take a back seat, let the other. So luckily I've always been blessed with team members that understand where I'm coming from. And if you see, most of my guys are not the kind of guys who are very loud or who are, oh, number one kind of a thing. So they have been patient with me. They've understood what I've tried to tell them. And they kind of believe in the roadmap that I set for them. So, through all these financial challenges and through all this, they've been very patient with me. And yeah, it's been a crazy journey. I mean, it still continues. It's not easy. It's surprising that, people are not willing to sponsor fighters that compete abroad for your country, and, and are still willing to sponsor bodybuilders and so-called fitness enthusiasts and give them nutritional support, but not fighters, simply because that fighter might not have that many likes or that many numbers. But I've tried to talk to supplement companies and tell them that, listen, this is when you invest in them. Help us make them big, so that when they become big, you have brand ambassadors that you created from ground zero. But I don't think that people have that kind of vision. Everybody wants to put in money behind. I mean, each to their own. I'm sure if I had a brand, I would have looked at it differently. But that's my thinking.
Okay, so now coming back to India, after those run in the international scene, you competed a lot in the team Relentless competed a lot in the Indian promotion, like YFC was there, X1 was there. So how was that shift, like competing in domestically?
So Ranjit, somewhere the financial challenge plays a big role here. So it came to a point where I realized that I need to keep my guys more active. And then there were, there's a huge chunk of guys who are up and coming, even as amateurs. See, I always rate my fighters on a scale, and I have a very realistic conversation with them. So I have these bunch of guys who, came to me and said, sir, we want to start fighting amateur. We might not turn pro, so we are not going to promise you and tell you we are going to be, pro fighters. But we want to fight amateur and see how it goes, and then we'll take a decision whether we want to fight pro or not. And I realized that, for these kind of guys, asking them to spend money to travel abroad and fight was not realistic. I mean, some could do it maybe because, they had that financial support from their family, or they had some, they had a job which could help them, but the others couldn't. So then we decided to, start heavily investing time and, in not only just promoting, but also competing in, national promotions as well, because it's not like I'm against national promotions. And I think it's a good base for guys that are starting off. Once they get like 3-4 good fights on a national promotion, they also know, okay, we stand, okay, we stand here. Now let me test myself outside. Let me, jump into deeper waters and see how I stand. So, that I think at that point, there were not many amateur leagues as well, to be really honest. I mean, now there's one, you throw a stone and you're going to hit some promotion. But at that point, when we started YFC, it was a group of clubs who we just said that, listen, we don't want to turn our fighters pro just for 5,000 and 6,000, throw our fighters at the deep end, and then you land up with guys who are good, but because of lack of experience, land up with a ridiculous record of 0-3 and 1-4, and then no other promotion abroad wants to touch them. So we were a group of like-minded people who said, why not, let's start something. And that's how YFC came to existence, and even X1 came to existence that way. Obviously, both of them have their own financial challenges. I'm sure you've covered our women's only fight night. And yeah, we're still struggling with it. And 2020 didn't do much to add to it. But yeah, I think, I still believe it's a good platform. Even for athletes who want to come in new and believe, oh, I want to be a fighter. It's a good reality check. One is they realize that, everybody is training. Every competition is a good competition. You're not going to fight idiots anymore. So it's gone are those days, when you were fighting in India, it was a karate guy against a judo guy. Now everybody trains MMA. Let's be really honest here. Everybody trains MMA today. We have such great clubs around the country, and we have such great grappling clubs. We have such great striking clubs. So it's the competition is getting better, and I think the benchmark is being raised every time we also do an event, and I think it's lovely. It's lovely, It also helps us more when we go abroad and compete, because now the home competition is good, so that when we step on international soil, we have a good amateur background to even go and compete amateur there.
Okay, interesting. You brought up the formation of YFC, like this is why you built the whole thing. And if you look back into the fights that are there in YouTube right now, those are like high quality fights, like equally matched fights. So what was that vision behind that particular promotion, and like what were the steps that you took to maintain that quality? I mean, the fight quality that was.
So, Ranjit, I think one of the biggest vision that we had, or one of the biggest mission statement that we had, was to create a platform for our fighters. I mean, you could call it selfish, where each of us said that, listen, I have a bunch of fighters, but they don't have a platform. I can't keep having my guys fight amongst themselves. They do that in every sparring. They are not going to improve. So we, like I said, we were a bunch of, good, like-minded clubs that came together and said, let's pit our fighters against each other. We did that in, very good faith, in a good competitive spirit, because we realized that the more they compete against each other, the better they're going to get. So somewhere I thanked them at that point that they trusted me with the matchmaking, because they believed that I had the experience. I had I had traveled so much, I had learned so much, that I had the experience to put together a good fight. And, touch wood, and thanks for, I take that as a personal compliment when you say that the fights even back then were of high level, because, I believe that we were a bunch of people who were training our guys with that passion, with that thing that, we don't want to restrict them to India. We want them to fight abroad. But before we send them to fight international, we want to give them a good, solid experience in India, so that when they step foot in a cage abroad, they're not out of place. Or, people don't look and say, I mean, they're good, but not when they step out. So I think that was our vision behind starting YFC, and it did very well. Somewhere, obviously, when commercials get involved, you have people like financiers who come in, and their vision after a point tends to differ, because we as athletes see an organic growth. We as athletes see a roadmap, which I believe they don't. After a point, they want to see the money there, which if they don't, tends to make them uneasy. And I mean, YFC is still there. And at some point, I hope to resurrect it, and I hope to, I'm working on certain things, and I'm hoping to get back YFC, because I believed in YFC a lot. And anyone who followed YFC or still does can say that there was a lot of passion, there was a lot of love behind that. So hopefully we'll be able to get that back somehow, and bring back that level of I would like to say that level of sport into that amateur level.
So coming back to your team, so for someone who does not know, like if you had to introduce the athletes in your team or like some members of your team, like what would you say?
I would say this is Team Relentless, man. Believe me, I'm not the kind of guy to give them numbers and say this is India's number 2 or number 3 or number 1. I think they are all good. I think, they are all very, very talented and they've proven themselves. It's not just talk. They've proven themselves not only on Indian soil, on foreign soil. They've lost a few, they've won a lot, you know. So I really don't know. I mean, I really don't know how to rank them because I believe there is no ranking system and I don't believe in ranking systems. I trust my guys. So if you ask me if they are the best, yes, damn well they are the best. And I will back that against anyone or anything. I believe each one of them, right from, Akshata Khartare to Navdeep to Rudransh to Manthan to Sushovan. I mean, the list is on and on and on to Sumit, to our recent guys like Sumit Bayan, Anuj Verma, even guys like Ankur Patel. We have guys like, we have fighters like Samta Sonavane, Sanika Patil. Everyone has proved themselves. They've all proven themselves in the cage. And so I don't think I need to introduce them. I think their records introduce themselves. And which is something I have always said that, making noise is one thing and having your record talk for you is one thing. And I think as a team, like I said, I'm lucky that my team believes in the philosophy that I do. So, if you see my team, they're not the kind who will run around and make a noise. We are not into trash talking. We are not into calling out people, but yeah, we'll fight anyone, man. We'll fight anyone because we believe that, fighting somebody doesn't make them our enemy. It only improves the level of my level and my opponent's level. So that is something we are always open to.
How did the whole Gamma India thing came to be?
So Ranjit, again, we've all. I mean, I'm not going to sit and badmouth anyone. We've all seen controversies against associations, and we've all had our experiences with associations and stuff like that. I'm not saying I'm the best or I'm the neatest guy around or only I'm the clean guy, but I have always believed in one thing, Ranjit. There are two ways to handle things. One is you sit and cry about what is wrong, and or you take the effort to jump in and try and do it yourself. That's what I tried to do with YFC. That's what we tried to do with X1, and that's our attempt with Gamma India. We were fortunate enough to, when Gamma contacted us and said that, listen, we are looking for fresh people who would do something different for the sport in the country. And I was lucky to be one of them they wanted to speak to. Our plans are pretty much in place. It's pretty much still on. We do have to take the fact safety in mind because this is not a joke. This pandemic is not a joke. We've seen how this can affect people in the long run. It's not about just, contracting the disease and if you pass 14 days, everything's good. It has long-term effects. We've seen that. So we want to be safe. We don't want to pull the trigger and say, oh, the day we are allowed, we are going to give it 1 month and have. No, I mean, let's be really honest here. There's not enough data. There's not enough science to say who can contract this disease, who can pass it. I mean, I believed if anyone says that, that person's just BSing, man. So I'm not really sure what is the safe path. I think it's all trial and error. Obviously, there is the silver lining. We all are hearing about the vaccines and stuff, and hopefully something turns up in the next 2 to 3 months. But yeah, we are going to make announcements soon, and we are going to lay out some more roadmaps. But we are pretty much on track. We will do what we've set out to do. We will have our zonal championships. We will have a very open selection for the team so that it's not only people who can afford to go for World Championship will go for World Championship, but people, I mean, we've seen that. Let's be really honest. We've seen open championships happen, which is very surprising because we tend to have promotions that keep like 10 national championships in a year. Which sport has that? Let's be really honest. You have one nationals. That is your selection for whatever, SEA Games, Asian Games, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it has been, and we would like to follow that also because we want to bring back that legitimacy. We want to bring back that seriousness to when you say a national championship. It cannot be something, "Arey 2 mahine baad to wapas hoga, we'll compete then." That we don't want that. We want them, see, understand also what happens is when you start filtering people at grassroots level, you are creating more competition at grassroots level. If I say that you have to win zonals to even compete for the nationals, you're creating competition at zonals. You have guys who will realize that, listen, I need to beat whatever amount of guys are there in zonals to then go on to beat whatever amount of guys that are there in nationals, and not like, even if I don't compete at zonals or if I lose at zonals, I can go to 8 nationals and win one of them and go for world championship. So I think my thinking is that that will create good filtration point, that will create seriousness in athletes, that it, as an athlete, I also know that if world championship is my goal, my first step is a zonal victory, my second step would be a national victory. So I think that's something which we want that message to go out, and hopefully we've seen normally when we do things, other people follow it. Hopefully after people hear this interview, I'm hoping other people will follow it and do what we are trying to do. So yeah.
Okay, so you've been like at it from 2009. So it's been like around like 11 years now. So how has the sport evolved in the nation according to you?
I won't put a percentage to it, but it has been phenomenal. From competing in a small room with 4 to 5 people to having a fight team of 28 amateurs and 5 or 6 professionals is huge. Is huge. Like I said, today I've always said this, today we have at least 1 million number one fighters in the country, and at least half a million number one clubs in the country, which was unheard of in 2009. And I think it's all good. I think it's all good. The more the competition, the better we are going to get.
Okay, so what's the future for Team Rivals?
Oh, we are going to continue doing what we are doing. So, we are. I'm a very boring person. I don't have very mind-blowing predictions to make. Or we are going to continue training. We are going to continue winning. We've had a 70+% win record internationally, and I plan to maintain that. I would love to say, increase that, but it's not easy. It's a fight. But we plan to maintain our record. We plan to maintain the quality of fights that we put up, the quality of fighters that we put forth. We plan to maintain that. And yeah, if you ask me this question 10 years from now, I'm going to give you the same answer. Team Relentless is going to keep doing what it does. It's going to keep producing quality fighters and keep putting up quality fights. Hopefully more promotions see it. Hopefully more promotions recognize the fact that just because we don't shout and make a noise, it's not that we aren't good. Go back, check our records, and then give us a call. If you want people that make noise, yeah, we are not the people. I'm sorry, we are not the right people.
Awesome. So, Coach, once again, thanks a lot for taking time out from your Sunday afternoon for this small interview series that we are doing. So, anything that you want to add, like before we close, anything about the fighters team, anything?
Nothing from my end, Ranjit. Like I said, I've been blessed to have a good team of people, and hope we are starting a new facility soon. So hoping to get on that mat soon and start training. What makes it more interesting is that I myself compete and I myself train. So for me, these are not just fighters; these are my teammates. I bleed with them, I sweat with them. So it's a very different connection. It's not just me sitting there and calling out commands to them. It's me jumping on the mat and doing it with them daily. So when they lose, I lose. A bit of a part of me loses every time they lose. When they win, it's a win for the team. So like I said, I've been blessed to train with huge, which I believe, future legends in this country. And I just on a very personal level, I hope to continue on this journey. I'm 42 now. I hope to be doing this till I can, at least 60 or more. Let's see. And yeah, so thanks for giving me the opportunity on being in this interview with you, and thanks for following us and promoting us in whatever manner you've been able to. It has been great help and support from people like you that have kept us active.
So thanks a lot, Coach, for coming again once again. So I think we'll wrap this up now, and hopefully we'll soon meet for another chat. So thanks once again.
Thank you, Ranjit.